Hey everybody, welcome back to my tutorials. This is Lance Taylor with lancetaylorphotography.com, and today we're going to do a tutorial on how to warm up your photos when you photographed on an overcast day. This is something that happens a lot to location photographers, especially when we are weather dependent. And my friend Michelle Short was kind enough to let me use one of her photographs because I thought it lended itself very well to this technique. And I hope you'll go check out her website. It's Michelle Short Photography, and the website is www.michelleshort.com. Go check out her work. She's got some great stuff. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is actually going to be a very short tutorial because it's so extremely easy, and it's only going to take 3 layers. Can you believe that? So the first thing we're going to do is, you'll notice that because she used a strobe, the model is lit with a warm color temperature, but the background is a little bit cold because it's overcast, and so it doesn't look quite natural in this case. So we thought we'd see what it looks like when you warm up the background and make that match the warm lighting on the client. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer using an adjustment layer. And in this case, we're going to select color balance. And what I do is just sort of play around with the yellow and red colors to match what it would look like at sunset. And when I did this earlier for some friends in a Facebook group, we use the settings negative 61 for yellow and plus 40, actually I think it was 64 for yellow and 41 for red. But since the model was already lit very warmly, we want to mask her out of this adjustment layer. So we're going to make sure that we have black as our active color, switch to the brush, and I'm just going to sort of color in the areas where I don't want the adjustment layer to affect. And just make sure we get the majority of her. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a fake sun peeking through the tree line in the background on the top left. So now we will add a new layer, and we're going to fill this layer with white. So we'll come down to Edit, Fill, change this to white, select OK. And now we need to mask out the parts that we don't want to use. So we're going to create a mask here, come over here to Gradient, Fill, and then you'll see up here that I have selected the Radial Gradient. I sometimes call this a circular gradient. And you just sort of draw the starting point and end point of your gradient. I like to go, since my tree line was in the top left, that's where the sun is going to start. And I'm going to go about halfway down the image here. So now it looks like we've got a sun peeking through the clouds. And you can sort of play with that. I can do Control Z to undo that and see how the sun looks over here, or even back here. You can make the size larger, smaller, whatever you feel like. But I kind of like the look coming from here to here. Okay, so now we have our fake sun, but as we often see when we photograph into the sun is lens flare on our lens. So I decided to add a fake lens flare here to just sort of make the overall scene look a little bit more realistic. So we're going to create another new layer, and just like the last layer, we're going to fill this layer, but instead of white, we're going to use 50% gray, and we're going to select OK. And the reason we do that is we're going to change the blend mode here to overlay, and I want you to see what happens when I select overlay. you see the layer disappears. You really can't see any effect from that layer. And the reason we do that is because whatever we do to this layer to add on this layer, the rest of the gray won't show up. Only the effects of what we do will show up here because of the blend mode. So the reason we added 50% gray on this layer is that we needed to add a sun flare. And if I remember correctly, this filter requires that you have some content on the layer itself. So if your layer is empty, it's not going to generate a sun flare. So that's why we do the 50% gray on this. So we come up here to Filter, Render, Lens Flare, and you have the different lens types. I just left it at 50 to 300 millimeter zoom, and I'm going to move the sun around and see where I want my flare to end up. So I'm going to say OK. And as you can see, it has even created what looks like the actual sun here with the flare around it, and there's more over here. And the good thing about this particular layer is you can move that around. So you can see a little bit more, and we can maybe move it up closer to the top where we had the white gradient. And that way we get this lens flare here. That is it. That is all there is to this tutorial, and you see how easy this technique is, and you can play around with all of these settings. If you don't like this particular lens flare, then you can tone it down by adding a mask, coming over here, and then adding a mask and masking out with your brush this part here that you don't like. There we go. Now it's gone. But I happen to like this one, so I'm just going to get rid of my layer mask and bring it back. And then I can just move it around as I please or as I see fit. So hopefully that was helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing your work online. Thanks a lot.